Welcome to the video, guys. As some of you might have heard, the BBC has found itself in hot water, or should I say, some of the presenters have, because on Tuesday night, Emily Maitliss gave what can only be considered a political attack against Dominic Cummings in her opening to the Newsnight show. When you couple this with Newsnight's previous performances, especially in relation to Brexit, it probably doesn't surprise you. But what did surprise me is that the BBC called her out for it and said that Newsnight breached BBC impartiality guidelines with Cummings' remarks, which I'm sure you will agree is rather shocking. It's not often this blatantly biased organisation will actually admit to it. But I will have to tell you now, it wasn't just Emily Maitliss who did this. There was also a radio presenter in Northern Ireland that swore about Dominic Cummings, thinking the mic was off, which we'll take a look at briefly in a moment. The BBC has said an introduction about Dominic Cummings on Tuesday's Newsnight did not meet the required standards of due impartiality. The programme began with presenter Emily Maitliss saying the country can see Cummings has broken the rules. It should have made clear the remarks were a summary of the question we should examine about the Prime Minister's aid, the corporation said. But Emily Maitliss didn't care about that. She wanted to put it in the minds of the people that he has done wrong, and certainly no more than the countless Labour MPs who have breached the rules that we know about, never mind the ones who have done it on the sly, which I'm sure there will be plenty, much like most of the country. The BBC said the news programme's staff had been reminded about its guidelines. What a slap down that is. You had to be told off like petulant children because you're making the organisation look worse than it already does, with, if memory serves, the lowest trust rating of any media organisation in this country, maybe even the world. At the beginning of the BBC Two programme, Maitliss said the country was shocked that the government could not see that Boris Johnson's aide had broken the rules by travelling from London to County Durham during the coronavirus lockdown. Well, Kenneth went from London to Manchester to drop off a cake and attend his dad's birthday party. SNP shitweasel Ian Blackford drove from London to Skye, which is most of the way across the country. So what the media have been saying over the last couple of days is essentially it's one rule for everyone else, then there's a rule for the Labour Party, and then there's rules for Dominic Cummings, because he is your political opponent, as I've said many times. She said the public mood was one of fury, contempt and anguish, and that Cummings had made people who struggle to keep to government rules feel like fools. No, because I expect most of these media shitweasels and political hacks that are screaming about Dominic Cummings doing this have probably done plenty of things to break the lockdown rules, which, as I've said before, are more guidance, so actually kind of worthless and mean very little, but the media needs something to jump on, with Brexit coming up, of course. She continued, the Prime Minister knows all of this, but despite the resignation of one minister, growing unease from his backbenchers, a dramatic early warning from the polls, and deep national disquiet, Boris Johnson has chosen to ignore it. Yes, because the media do not control the government and who advises the Prime Minister. It would be an extremely slippery slope if that was to happen. I'm sure all of you, even those who don't agree with me on the Dominic Cummings situation, would agree that the country should not be run by the media. In a statement on Wednesday, the BBC said it had reviewed the entirety of last night's Newsnight, including the opening section. While we believe the programme contained fair, reasonable and rigorous journalism, yeah, you're having a laugh there, ain't you? We feel that we should have done more to make clear the introduction was a summary of the question we would examine. With all the accompanying evidence in the rest of the programme, it continued. But Emily Maitliss didn't want that, did she? She was there for a political attack, and did that purposely, I would say. Hence why I think she's been technically suspended, because she wasn't on Newsnight last night. Hopefully that signals the end of her hosting it, or preferably the end of the show. It's a completely useless, woke lefty nonsense promoting pile of shit that no one actually cares about. The BBC claim it's news, but in reality, it's always attacking Boris Johnson, the government, or in this case, Dominic Cummings. As it was, we believe the introduction we broadcast did not meet our standards of due impartiality. Well, no shit, Sherlock. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work that out. Even Diane Abbott would be able to manage it. Now, before we continue with the Emily Maitliss story, we also had this one here, which is in the Express. BBC presenter calls Dominic Cummings a dick live on air as blunder exposes true views, which is something we have always known. But in their desperation now, it seems the BBC hacks no longer want to hide what they think. A BBC radio presenter branded Dominic Cummings a dick during a live on air blunder, raising fresh questions over the public service broadcaster's impartiality. There is no question about it, it's not impartial in the slightest. And here we have the clip. Let's take a quick listen to it so I don't have to read it out.
The Prime Minister's chief advisor, Dominic Cummings, is to make a public statement this afternoon amid growing calls for him to stand down or be fired over claims he broke lockdown rules. About 20 Conservative MPs have publicly criticised Mr Cummings for driving 260 miles from London to relatives in Durham with his young son and his wife after she developed symptoms of coronavirus. Boris Johnson said it was legitimate.
I was thinking he was such I have written his name in as Richard Cummings.
The Sun's political editor Tom Newton-Dunn says the decision for Mr Cummings to make a statement is an admission by Downing Street.
Well, you heard it there. What a dopey bint that woman is, but it does expose the BBC's true feelings towards the government and, of course, the people of this country that will vote a different way to them every time. The BBC, like Jeremy Corbyn, despise the people of this country because we're smart enough to see through the complete bullshit. BBC presenter Nuala McKeever made the derogatory remarks about Boris Johnson's chief advisor Dominic Cummings during a broadcast on BBC Radio Ulster. The comments made by Ms Keever, 55, could be overheard during Monday's 3 p.m. news bulletin as she waited to present her afternoon show. What an absolute idiot this woman is, but it's always good to see their utter bias come out. We know it's there, but the trouble is always proving it. These last couple of days are certainly showing the BBC, and Sky News for that matter, for what they really are. Now, I'm not going to bother reading any of this, there's not much point. Let's carry on and check out more about the Emily Maitliss story. Because here we had this morning, and if you watched the show last night for any amount of time, you would have noticed that Emily Maitliss replaced the Newsnight episode after Cummings' remarks, as she should have been, and probably should be entirely. It's clearly obvious the bias that she has and the fact that she cannot be trusted as a news anchor, therefore should not be put in front of the public on a publicly funded broadcaster. End of story, if you ask me. Emily Maitliss was replaced as host of Wednesday's night's episode of Newsnight by another member of the programme's team after BBC bosses reprimanded her over a monologue in which she attacked the government's handling of Dominic Cummings' lockdown trip to Durham, while completely ignoring the multiple Labour MPs who have travelled across the country, along with the snivelling shitweasel known as Ian Blackford. And they are, like I said, just the ones we know about. Now, we know what it says there about the bosses saying she breached impartiality rules. We won't read that again. She had been due to host the show on Wednesday night, but the Newsnight reporter, Katie Razzle, presented it instead. Maitliss later tweeted she had asked for the night off. Yeah, we'll have to take your word for that, I suppose. Are you sure they weren't saying, like, maybe you should take the night off? As in asking, but not really asking. More like telling, because they know what a complete shit show you are and how stupid you've made them look, especially with what's going on in relation to Dominic Cummings and the media's utterly embarrassing behaviour. I am inclined to believe that is more likely the reason you didn't host the show last night. Amid growing criticism of the reprimand, Newsnight editor Esme Wren wrote on Twitter that Maitliss hasn't been replaced tonight in response to the BBC statement. In the monologue, Maitliss told viewers Dominic Cummings broke the rules as we heard. The country can see it, and it's shocked the government cannot. He made those who struggle to keep to the rules look like fools, and has allowed many more to assume they can flout them. Well, there are reports that up to 50% of people, especially in the younger generations, are already flouting them, which, let me tell you now, is going to be the majority of people screaming and shouting about this, because they are all very active on Twitter. This is where the BBC gets their public opinion from. Clips of the sequence went viral, we see that no one actually cares. And obviously, The Independent had to come out with Emily Maitliss praised for summing up public mood over Dominic Cummings' row in Newsnight opener. No, she didn't sum up public mood, she summed up lefty Twitter and media mood. That is it. Most of the country don't care, they just want to be able to go outside again. They don't care who's broke the rules and who's done this and that. They just want to get on with their lives, try and get their jobs back, and try and see their family. They really do not care about this nonsensical bullshit outside of the political activists of this world, and maybe those who are deeply involved in politics because they enjoy it or are a Corbyn supporter. And to finish it off, we also have the other side of the story, which is Telegraph readers on Newsnight Emily Maitliss Rai, an Orwellian atrocity, which is what we're currently living through. Most of you will agree with that. BBC Newsnight presenter Emily Maitliss failed to appear on the programme on Wednesday, as we heard. Miss Maitliss caused a political storm, opening the BBC Two programme with the words, "Dominic Cummings broke the rules." Blah-de blah-de blah, we already know what she said. But here we have some counteracting views to obviously rubbish what Emily Maitliss said about the whole country wanting this scandal to be over. They want it to be over, but by getting rid of the media and the bullshit reporting on it. Let's be honest, The Guardian admitted to knowing about it 6 weeks before they dropped it. So, at the end of the day, it was blatantly a political hit piece, timed perfectly as we approach the Brexit extension deadline. But we have here Peter Hawke saying, Newsnight is a totally pointless, biased diatribe of left-wing liberal wokery, as is the presenter. The sooner the programme and presenter are dropped, the better. I can't wait to see the BBC privatised and the licence fee eliminated. Amen, my friends, spot on. The left-wing liberal wokery is a massive issue within the BBC and not something you're ever going to get rid of, even if it was privatised, but at least we wouldn't be paying for it then. We had Daryl Webb also, known same person, still believes the BBC is impartial, as I am sure we will shortly find out when the Brexit extension or another referendum campaign starts shortly. The Conservatives largely have themselves to blame for continuing to allow left-wing figures to dominate senior positions in public sector organisations. Spot on, Daryl. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's common knowledge that the Conservative parties are fairly weak because they are kind of left-wing themselves. You could hardly call them a right-wing party in 2020, let's be honest. They are just nowhere as left as obviously the Labour Party, who are so hard left they are actually off the scale. James Jeffrey said, "It's so sad that we see this level of unprofessional polemic described as savage journalism by one Maitliss admirer. I am a BBC supporter, but they're going to be cut loose soon, and it will be their own darn fault." So, James Jeffrey is actually a fan of the BBC and supports what it does, but has the sense about him to call out its completely unprofessional bullshit that they consider savage journalism. We all know what it is. It's political hit pieces and the good old political point scoring that we have seen so much of recently. Carl Sanderson says, during the 2016 referendum campaign, the BBC was scrupulously fair. Once the result came in, however, all bets were off. Dimblby's ashen face appeared to be a signal to anyone at the BBC to begin working against the result. Maitpiss's intemperate and incautious monologue was emblematic of that tendency. And once again, that is beyond doubt. Now, there is something you will find out from me reading out these posts here. They're all factually correct. Tell me one part of any of them that is not exactly spot on. Liz Oldfield says, more evidence, as if we needed it, that this row is nothing to do with lockdown rules, but everything to do with Brexit. And the BBC is lapping it up. Shame on them. With a poll here saying, should the BBC licence fee be scrapped? Of course it should. And 92% agree with me, so we are in the massive majority, it would seem, of obviously Telegraph readers, though I'm sure Guardian readers probably feel the same, as they seem to think the BBC favours the Tories somehow. Now before I go, I've started doing live streams and uploading gaming content on my second channel. If you would like to come and join me for a live stream to chat in real time, have an interest in gaming related content on YouTube, or just want to follow me over there because you are a legend, the link will be down in the video description below and as a pinned comment. I hope to see you all there. Now as always, before I go, I want to thank our PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar and YouTube members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.